Hey guys, so I wanted to get on here and talk about the movie Materialist. I went to see that recently. It is with Dakota Johnson, Chris Evans, and Pedro Pascal, I think is his name. Two very great looking men. But in the movie, Dakota Johnson is I forgot what they're called, but basically they help people find relationships, find people to date, and they're rewarded when they have a couple that gets married. But the way that they go about finding these people is the part that's the part that's kind of different. So one of the things that's brought up is they're talking about height, wealth, value, like is the person checking these boxes. And I will say the movie does end how I figured it would end, but how they get to that point was definitely different. They turn in a different direction. It's a good movie. I would give it like an 8.5 out of 10. It was a pretty good movie, but it definitely takes a turn and it goes in a direction I wasn't expecting. I love Dakota Johnson though. But so they're talking about checking all these boxes. Well, when she's dating Pedro, it almost seems like it's kind of boring. Like he has this money and he can take her to all these nice fancy places, and she doesn't have to worry about money at all. But it felt like the vibe was kind of like boring. And that's not to say that every rich guy a woman dates is going to be boring, but basically they were showing how there was like no deep substance with that relationship, but there was with the other guy, Chris Evans, who was poor, broke. He was on this journey to becoming an actor, and he was angry about being poor. And this is my thing. I don't have money, not yet. Eventually, yes, my bank account will be overflow. I'm speaking into existence. But I will say, when you date, as women, when you date a man who makes less than you, it is definitely, that ends up being an issue. That ends up coming up at some point. Now, if you guys are both up there, but you make a little bit more than him, I think that's a little different than if he's the manager at a grocery store and you're like the CEO of a company making six figures. Like, I just think that there is a definite difference in the reaction that you're going to get in a relationship with a man when you're making more than them. I also think that a lot of times men don't care about what you do, which I don't know if this is good or bad, but men don't care that much about what you do for a living. They don't care how much money you make. They don't care what your goals are a lot of the times. Like when it comes to career-wise, they don't care about that a lot of the times. I've noticed that. But women, that's usually one of the first things on our list. But also with the list, they were talking about how height is always up there, which I'm 5'3", and maybe because I'm not very, like, it doesn't take much to be taller than me. Might be why I don't think that much about height. My child's father is 6'4". I've dated men who are 6 foot and taller, but it just wasn't a thought because I guess they could be 5'10" and 5'11", and they're still quite a bit taller than I am at 5'3". But that's always a big thing. Another thing I think women always are saying is you want a man with a sense of humor. And that is important, I think, for a lot of us because life is hard. We go through all types of trials and tribulations. If you don't have someone to laugh with, then you're going to be crying, you're going to be fighting, you're going to be upset a good portion of the time. Like, you need to be able to laugh at these things. I've had to laugh at a good amount of life. So if I didn't have someone with me to laugh with me, it just wouldn't be right, But what I was going to say was, in regards to picking people based off of checking boxes. I definitely don't think you should pick people based off of checking boxes. You have to look at someone's character. A lot of times people are like, oh, he's good looking. I always say you can't base everything off of someone being good looking. Yes, you have to be attracted to that person, but if you're looking for, the 11 out of 10, that guy who's an 11 out of 10, and that's all you're worried about, it's not going to get very far. You really need to worry about a person's character, how they treat people, how they are with kids and old people, how they tip the waitress, how they, just those things to me are more important when you're looking at the long haul, when you're looking at the long scheme of things. Ultimately, I won't tell the entire movie, but I will say, honestly, she shouldn't have went with either one. That's what I would say. And the reason why I say that is because, like I said, the one with money, Pedro, it just seemed like it was very boring. Like, it was great going to these nice places, but it just wasn't any passion. One of the things she said when they were talking, because she was trying to figure out why he was so interested in her, and he was like, he never understood couples who fight in the street. And she says, I'm one of those people who fight in the street, because she had fought in the street with her ex before. And I was thinking, I think part of that is the passion sometimes. Like, you care so much, it doesn't matter where you're at, you're willing to have this discussion with this person. Everybody doesn't have a relationship where you never argue. I always think that's kind of, usually if you're not arguing, and I don't mean fighting, I mean having a disagreement, someone's not saying something. Because men and women, we're different people. We're not going to agree on everything just based off of being a man and being a woman. So if you're never ever disagreeing, someone's not saying something. I think that's the case 9 times out of 10. Someone's just not saying anything, and eventually they are going to say something, and it may end up being that the relationship ends. That's how I think about it. But there just felt like there was no passion with the guy with money. And then the other guy, for me, it wasn't the fact of him being poor. It was the fact of how he went about being poor. That probably sounds crazy of what I'm saying, but I haven't had a ton of money. There hasn't been a point where I've had just a ton of money. There might be a time where I've had like a lump sum, but just like money overflowing constantly, that hasn't happened to me yet, speaking it into existence. But I don't think with a poor mindset though either. I think that's going to happen at some point. It hasn't happened yet, but I'm still alive. I'm still able to, invest and make more money and do the things. And I felt like he had a poor mindset. He was constantly talking about being broke, being poor. Oh, do you want to be with this poor man? No, not if that's like your constant attitude, is that you're poor and you're going to be poor forever. Like, it was his attitude about it, I think, that would have bothered me. That would have been the turnoff for me. Yes, there's going to be times where you may not have it, but you can always be working toward it. And I'm not going to think with a poor mindset. When my daughter says stuff about being poor or broke, I'm always like, you're poor or broke, if that's what you want to claim. I don't claim that energy whatsoever, because I've always been able to somehow manage to pay for things, get the things that she needed, get the things that I needed. So no, I may not have an overflow of money in my bank account yet, but I refuse to have that poor mindset. And I couldn't be with someone who had that poor mindset. I couldn't. So I feel like at the end, I kind of was like, she probably shouldn't have been with either one. I won't say who she chose. You can figure that out for yourself. But I felt like it wouldn't have worked for either one, to be honest. I will say though, there was a point where they made her seem like that's all she cared about was how much money this person had, where they could take her. But I think that she was with the other guy for so long, and dealing with him caring about $25 or where paying to park made her go drastically the opposite direction, where it was like, I want someone who just, money's not a conversation piece at all. We're not talking about money. We're good. You know, we can have valet parking and it's fine. You're not going to sit up here and complain about that. So I will say, they say money is one of the top reasons why marriages and relationships don't work out. And I can definitely see why, because if you guys don't have the same mindset about having money or having no money, or what the plan is to get money, then yeah, chances are it's not going to work out very well. So that was my take on The Materialist. I do recommend you see it for yourself. I think it was a good movie. It's definitely not going to go the way you think it's going to go. There's some things that happen in the movie that I wasn't prepared for. But that's my take on it. You guys hit like, hit subscribe, and I'll see you guys next video.